He pushed a folded contract across my kitchen table like it was a placemat, and with that same polite smile he uses with waiters, my own son said, "Sign it, Mom. You'll thank me later." The pen he offered had our family name embossed in gold from the year I turned 60, a birthday he missed because of a deal. I'm 69 now, and that word has eaten through our lives like rust. I read the first paragraph twice, feeling my cheeks heat. Assignment of share and vacate agreement. In my house. Over my tea. From my son. When I hesitated, he glanced at the clock as if I were making him late. You have to understand, I'm ordinary in all the ways that don't make a headline. I was a bookkeeper for the Riverton textile mill, kept payroll and petty cash straight long after the looms fell silent, and the brick buildings were carved into cheap apartments with thin walls and generous drafts. I'm the woman who keeps keys for neighbors, who makes soup when someone's coughing, who remembers who prefers dill and who can't stand it. That usefulness is invisible until someone decides you're in the way. My son, Daniel, decided that on a Wednesday. He tapped the page where a number sat next to my name, a number I didn't recognize. I bought your old share, the one tied to the cooperative that used to own this place, at a discount from a debt buyer. You probably forgot about it, Mom. It happens at your age. He said it gently, the way you talk to a child about a broken toy. This is a win-win. You sign, I'll pay off your HOA arrears, and I'll help you relocate somewhere with an elevator. You'll be happier. I stared at the paper. The old share was a relic from the 90s when city officials, desperate to save the mill buildings, created a housing cooperative. Each apartment got a small ownership slice of the land under us. When the co-op went dormant years later and the management company took over, those shares became paperwork tucked into drawers, more sentimental than useful. Or so we thought. I had fallen behind on common charges after my hip surgery 5 winters ago. It was paid up, eventually, but I never imagined anyone could buy a past lien and resurrect a stale share to shove me out. What happens if I don't sign? I asked. Then I'll file to partition the property, he said, too fast. It's technical. You'd hate it. The legal fees alone. He looked almost pitying. Don't do that to yourself. I looked past him, through my kitchen window, to the courtyard where Nina hung laundry on lines that swung like prayer flags. To Mateo at the concierge desk, the man who watched all our comings and goings and pretended not to see us cry. To the bricked-over archway that still remembers clattering bobbins. This is not just square footage. It is the stubborn memory of people who stayed when the mill left. I poured more tea and heard, a floor above us, the thud-thud of a child running and a woman saying show. Another neighbor's life in motion. I have lived my life like a spine in this building, quiet, necessary, unseen. Something in me went very still and very straight. Let me read it carefully, I told Daniel, folding the contract. I have a neighbor who understands these things. Who, Nina? He laughed, impatient. She's a nurse. Not Nina, I said, and slid the paper into my notebook, where a yellow sticky note already waited, a name and a number the mailman had scribbled to me last week after a complaint meeting. When my son left with that same tight smile, I took the sticky out and dialed. On the second ring a calm voice said, "Riverton Legal Aid, this is Mr. Whitcomb." And that was the moment I stopped being alone. The humiliation didn't arrive in one blow, but in small, carefully delivered taps meant to loosen the screws of a person until she rattles. The next morning, Tessa, my daughter-in-law, typed into the building's group chat, "Hi neighbors. Exciting updates coming to our property soon. We'll be doing a refresh, parking rules, storage reassignment, guest policy. Thank you for your cooperation." Little smiling faces bobbed under her message. Someone asked, Polytel, what we meant. She replied with a sun emoji, the new majority owner. Details soon. At the store, I heard 2 women whisper about the old lady in 2B whose son is smart enough to take her keys before she sets the building on fire. At the clinic, a receptionist asked if I had a family member who could sign my consent form because these medical disclosures can be confusing at your age. In the lobby, a laminated notice appeared. All occupancy changes must be reported to management immediately. I knew what they were building, a story of incapacity, dependency, trouble. I felt shame stand up in me like a second spine. Nina tugged my sleeve. "Don't read that garbage," she said, eyes blazing. "You're the only one who remembers where the main water shutoff is." When Tessa flooded the hallway with her indoor herb garden, who saved the day? You. She walked me to legal aid, holding my elbow like we were sisters. Mr. Whitcomb was precise, a man who arranged paper like a carpenter arranges tools, careful and sure. I slid the contract across his desk. He read, then whistled softly through his teeth. "Your son used an assignment of a co-op share that was tied to an HOA lien from 6 years ago. That lien was satisfied, but the share certificate lived on in limbo. Someone bought it at a bulk bad debt auction, transferred it to an LLC controlled by your son, then returned to you with a thread of partition. It's ugly but not new. Can he force me out?" I asked, hearing my voice catch and hating it. "Not easily," Whitcomb said. "Especially if you revive what they're trying to loot." He laid it out like a map. The old cooperative had bylaws that were never formally dissolved. Those bylaws granted members preemptive rights over transfers of shares and required the board's approval for any assignment that would affect occupancy. No board remained because we all got tired, distracted, or broke. If you can resurrect the cooperative, seat a board, and adopt protective rules, you can block or encumber any hostile transfer. It's the rule of the world here. Whoever keeps the minutes keeps the building. On the way home, Nina squeezed my hand. "We're going to do this," she said. "We're going to be boring and relentless until they get tired." The humiliations continued to do their tapping. Tessa came by with a gift basket, crackers, a candle that smelled like laundry. She set it on my table, sat down without asking, and spoke with the tender concern of a dentist about to drill. "Eliza, I booked a lovely studio at Riverton Oaks for you. They have bingo nights and a shuttle to the mall. Imagine not having to worry about stairs. If you sign by Friday, Dan will cover 3 months' rent." She slid the studio brochure over the space where my contract had sat yesterday. Under the ribbon woven through the basket handle, I noticed a receipt with her name partially visible. It wasn't from a retirement home. It was from an office downtown, Harland Property Services. I'd been there 10 years ago when a friendly consultant named Lydia helped me renegotiate my mortgage after the surgery. Lydia, who told me I was lucky to have a son who'd take things off my plate. Lydia, who had been the first to mention that my co-op share certificate was basically trash. If a consultant tells you a thing is worthless, check whose pocket the trash can belongs to. I smiled as if soothed. "Let me think about it, dear." "Thank you." That night, an official envelope arrived. Notice of intent to partition, informational. The language was cold as a winter doorknob. The last line said, "You may avoid this action by cooperating with the majority interest holder." I cried once that night, quietly, with the dignity you give yourself when nobody else will. Then I wiped the table, put a fresh pad in my notebook, wrote cooperative revival and made a list. Names. Phone numbers. Skills. Mateo's name I underlined twice. He sees everything. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the bank letter under my palm, the way you hold down a thing that wants to fly. At 3 a.m., fear looks like common sense. It says, sign the paper, get a quiet room somewhere with carpeted halls. But fear forgot something. I kept the payroll for 300 workers once. I balanced a budget during 3 reorganizations. My hands know numbers even when my heart stumbles. I called the bank as soon as the lines opened. After 3 transfers, a young woman with a steady voice told me the origin of the $4,000 transfer. It was requested in person yesterday at our Main Street branch by your designated agent, per the power of attorney on file. I don't have a power of attorney on file, I said. It was signed 2 weeks ago, she replied, reading. Witnessed by Lydia Harland. I hung up and sat very still. Fake benefactor. Old helper Lydia had slid a document under my hand during a review and lifted my signature like a pickpocket. I remembered the meeting perfectly now, the way she had tapped the page with the back of her pen while recounting a story about her mother's fall, how she had said, sign here to confirm we met. I'd signed the margins of a power of attorney that gave Riverton Oaks Holding LLC control to assist with relocation and bill payments. And who owned Riverton Oaks Holding? The state registry said Torrin Partners LLC. The business registry said Torrin Partners belonged to D. Hart, manager. I made coffee and walked to Mateo's desk. He looked up from his crossword. "You look like a person who needs to say something in my little office instead of out here," he said, and opened the door. His office held a coat rack, a radio, and a wall of binders labeled by year. He pulled down the one marked 4 years ago and set it on his lap like a cat. "We keep a residence registry for packages, you know, names, signatures," he said. "It's boring. Except the day it isn't." From the binder, he slid a sheet protector with a visitor log. Last week's Thursday. Harlan Property Services typed under vendor, followed by a scribble that was not mine but attempted to be. Below it, a camera still printed on cheap paper. Tessa's back, Lydia's face in profile, my door open. "I shouldn't print these without a request," he said. "But sometimes it's better to beg forgiveness later." "Why help me?" I asked, my voice rough. He shrugged. "Because you bring me soup when my back hurts, and you once fixed my son's FAFSA forms so he didn't overpay by $800. Also because I like to watch bullies lose." We began our slow, boring rebellion. Nina went door to door with a clipboard. "We're reviving the co-op. Don't roll your eyes. Sign here to show support. We'll hold election Saturday." It's not a revolution. It's a meeting. I spent an afternoon at the city clerk's office with Whitcomb, updating the cooperative status from inactive to in good standing, paying the overdue $78 fee that somehow is the hinge of our lives. We posted notices of a members' meeting, and I baked a pan of apple bars because people sign papers more readily with cinnamon on their tongues. Small victories arrived. The legal aid clinic filed an emergency motion to enjoin any transfer of my share pending verification of consent. The bank froze my account and flagged the POA as under dispute. Social services came, at my invitation, to assess whether I qualified for an in-home support plan. They approved 2 hours of weekly help for my hip, which, Whitcomb said, creates an additional tenancy protection layer. If they want you out, they now have to negotiate with the city, and the city is slower than a Sunday bus. Reversed weakness. I who refuse help on principle signed as a person in need, not to broadcast frailty, but to fasten a legal seatbelt. I hated it, then realized the belt kept me in the car while the world swerved. Blows landed, too. The day before the cooperative meeting, my mailbox was pried open and my folder of old receipts went missing, the very ones Whitcomb wanted to establish the chain of ownership from the 90s. Nina found the metal bent like a cheap spoon. "They're desperate," she said. We sat on my stoop until dark, passing the same cup of tea back and forth, trying not to feel small. The next morning, Mateo knocked with his quiet urgency. He closed my door, turned the radio up loud, and put a flash drive in my palm. "I wasn't going to say anything," he murmured. "But last night I saw Daniel in the basement copying something from the old storage cabinets, looked like the original cooperative ledger." He didn't see me. The camera did. He pointed at the flash drive. He also stepped into the manager's office. "The lock on the filing cabinet was scratched this morning. If your receipts are missing, they may be in his briefcase." "This could get you fired," I said. "Only if I get caught," he replied, with a thin smile that made him look 20. They hadn't found rats. They'd placed a plastic baggie of dry pellets and filmed themselves discovering it, ready to claim I was creating a health hazard. I dumped it into a Ziploc, labeled, dated, and put it in the freezer like an evidence popsicle. Then I scrubbed my pantry shelves until they looked like pages of a clean notebook. Quiet, boring, relentless. The courtroom smelled like dust and old coffee. We filled a bench, Nina in a bright scarf, Mateo in his best shirt, Mrs. Patel from 3A with a cane like a conductor's baton, and Mr. Whitcomb with his expandable file that opened like a portable fortress. On the other side, Daniel sat in a suit I'd bought him for his first internship, Tessa glued to her phone. Lydia slipped in late, sunglasses too dark for the room, the kind of woman who believes she's a guest star in any scene. The judge was brisk and unsentimental. We're here on Hart versus Hart et al., motion for preliminary injunction, and on petition for partition. I folded my hands to keep them from dancing. Whitcomb rose. Your Honor, the defendants attached an assignment of a cooperative share obtained by questionable means from a dormant association, and now seek to partition a dwelling occupied by a 69, I corrected reflexively. By a 69-year-old member who has revived the cooperative per statute and exercised preemptive rights. The judge lifted a brow. You revived it? Whitcomb nodded. Bylaws never dissolved. Fees paid. Board installed. Members' meeting minutes attached as Exhibit D. He passed a sheaf. Each page bore signatures in different inks, smudges from apple bars, a coffee ring. The judge's mouth quirked. Daniel's attorney spoke about efficiency, modernization, safety risk, and my declining faculties, a phrase he delivered like a favor. He argued that the transfer was valid, the cooperative a fig leaf, and my account of the power of attorney confused. We have the POA right here, he finished, raising a paper. As do we, Whitcomb said. We also have the bank's fraud report flagging it, and, more salient for today, we have video evidence. He nodded to Mateo, who stood like a tree learning to be a witness. We watched, all of us, as the courtroom screen flickered and the CCTV footage from our lobby played, Lydia and Tessa at my door, Lydia's hand guiding mine on a paper while Tessa angled her phone to block the peephole. Then the two of them slipping into the manager's office after hours. Another clip, Daniel in the basement, opening the old cooperative ledger cabinet, removing a book, photographing pages, replacing some, pocketing others. He lifted the ledger to the light like a person checks a watermelon, and for a second, his face was the boy who used to hold light that way to inspect jarred fireflies. The judge paused the video there, where love and theft made the frame confusing for me. Whitcomb didn't look at me. He kept his voice steady. Your Honor, the cooperative ledger is the only original record of share allocations. Removing pages interrupts chain of title and constitutes spoliation. We ask for an adverse inference instruction should this proceed, and immediate injunctive relief. Also, Exhibit F. A escrow summary showing payments from Torrin Partners LLC to Harland Property Services and to Ms. Tessa Hart, line item, consulting, tenant transition, and a $4,000 transfer from Ms. Hart's account to Riverton Oaks Holding LLC, authorized under the disputed POA. The room fell into that special silence where even breathing sounds like commentary. Lydia sat very still. Tessa's mouth made a small O at the word consulting. Daniel didn't move. The judge pinched the bridge of his nose. Mr. Hart, he said, voice flat, is Torrin Partners your company? It's an investment vehicle, Daniel replied. Are you the manager? I am, he said, and swallowed. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Hart, do you want to remain in your home? Yes, Your Honor, I said. And I want the cooperative to protect not just me but the others. We can't be picked off one by one. He nodded once, the tiniest bow to the idea of community. Partition is an equitable remedy, he said slowly. Equity doesn't smile on gamesmanship. The motion for injunction is granted. The petition to partition is stayed. The power of attorney is suspended pending a fraud investigation. The cooperative is recognized as active for the purpose of exercising its rights until any further order. A ripple ran through the benches, the exhale of 10 people who had been clenching for months. Then the judge added, almost wearily, Counsel, you may address sanctions once the fraud matter is resolved. I thought that would be the end. But there was one more thing. At Whitcomb's signal, the back door of the courtroom opened, and a young woman stepped in with a banker's box. She wore a cardigan with a coffee stain on the sleeve and eyes like a person who has never lied on purpose. This is Ms. Jimenez, Whitcomb said. She's a junior analyst at the escrow company that processed the Torrin Partners payments. She asked to remain anonymous, but agreed to authenticate records in camera. The judge allowed it. Ms. Jimenez's hand trembled as she held up a sheet. I saw a discrepancy, she said, voice thin. Ms. Harland's commission voucher for elder relocation services was coded as charitable. It flagged because we don't allow double payment codes. When I tried to correct it, my supervisor told me to process and forget. I couldn't. She glanced at me, then at the judge. I come from a building like hers. The judge looked at Daniel's side of the room. No one spoke. The truth weighed itself quietly and chose a place to sit. The bills arrived in thin white envelopes that slice before you notice you're bleeding. Daniel's attorney fees after the injunction. The sanctions for Discovery Games when the missing ledger pages were not returned. The bank's notice of reimbursement for the $4,000 transfer. The cooperative filed a civil claim against Harlan Property Services and Torrin Partners for fraudulent interference with the members' rights and to recover our own legal costs. Lydia resigned her license to focus on family. Tessa published a long post about misunderstandings online with a photo of a sunset. It got 9 likes. The cooperative became the small government I never knew I'd love. We met monthly. We drafted bylaws that fit our bruises and our hopes. We created a preemptive right of first refusal for any share transfer, set a hardship policy that forgives dues after illness, and a contingency fund for legal defense. I served as treasurer again, my hands remembering numbers like an old piano piece. Nina chaired the care committee, organizing grocery runs and carpools to the clinic. Mateo, in an act of quiet heroism, accepted a formal role as records custodian with a modest stipend and bought a lock for the filing cabinet with a key engraved, "Stop me if you can." As for Daniel, he paid. In money, certainly court costs, our attorney's fees, the penalties for escrow mislabeling. But also in something harder to replace, the halo he wore in his head as a man who fixes things for the women in his life. The day he came to pick up Ben, he stood on the step and didn't try to come in. He had shaved too close and nicked his chin. He looked smaller. "I won't pretend I did this for you," I said, meeting his eyes through the screen door. "I did it for myself and for the people who will live here after me. If you want a life with your son that looks better than this, pay attention to how he just watched you lose and why." He nodded once. "I'm sorry," he said, or maybe he mouthed it. It's hard to tell with grown men who forgot how to apologize. The city audited our building because of the fraud report. It was a nuisance and a gift. We fixed things that had been broken so long they had become decor. The exit sign that didn't light, the stair tread that sang, badly underweight. We filed clean minutes with the clerk and paid our silly yearly fee like it was the temple tax for belonging to something you are proud to tend. On a Tuesday in May, I used my new cane to walk to the courtyard. Children shrieked. Nina pinched basil into a bowl. Mateo unfolded a plastic chair for me under the persimmon tree that somehow keeps trying in this climate. Mrs. Patel told me my apple bars had too much cinnamon and took 2 more. I watched Ben carry a crate of folding chairs without being asked. The way boys do when they're learning their hands can be useful without applause. He looked at me and smiled, the half smile that was Daniel's before business school taught him to clench it into something else. I didn't gloat. Revenge, as it turns out, does not taste like victory cake. It tastes like paperwork done right and doors that no longer rattle when someone pushes on them. It tastes like sleeping through the night because a judge signed a piece of paper and neighbors signed theirs, and we are boring together in a way that scares sharks. I started a small thing that gives me more joy than any lawsuit ever could. Thursday mornings, people from surrounding buildings come to our community room with envelopes and phone screenshots. We call it Paper Club. We help them read their leases, cancel junk POAs, enroll in the city's home care program if they need it, and we collect stories. Mateo says we've turned bureaucracy into a potluck. He's not wrong. Every first Thursday, I see fear leave someone's face like mist after sun, and that is a form of revenge I can recommend to anyone. What do I want you to take from this? Not that an old woman beat a slick scheme, though that is true. Not that my son got what was coming, though bills do have a way of arriving. I want you to take a mental picture of a yellow sticky note with a name and a number and the hand that reaches for it. We are not safe when we're alone. We are safe when our names appear next to each other on minutes and petitions and casseroles. Sometimes at night, I stand at my window and look at the arch in the courtyard, bricked up when the last spool left. This place once made threads strong enough to pull a town through 3 winters. We made new threads with signatures and stubbornness and coffee rings on pages. I think about Daniel as a small boy pressing jarred fireflies to the light, about the clip paused in court, about the grandson who now lingers after drop-off because the lobby always smells like cinnamon and safety. And I ask myself as I switch off the light, what kind of inheritance is worth leaving? Not an apartment. Not a share. This, a rulebook that cannot be used as a weapon, because we wrote it ourselves. And one more thing, I kept the embossed pen he brought that day. It sits in a cup with the other pens, mixed and available, neither honored nor hidden. When someone at Paper Club needs to sign something important, I hand it to them and say, "This one writes dark. Press firmly." Then I watch, the way we all watched in court, as a line in ink changes the direction a life leans.